thank you guys for joining us on our first ever session. So it's me and Janice here talking about our journey. We're talking about positivity. We're talking about good energy. We're talking about personal development, self-love. So we welcome you to our first episode today. So I want to welcome Janice. Thank you so much for joining me in my group, sharing your talent, sharing the yoga, sharing your kind of experience in like your personal development journey and kind of how that's inspired you to be where you are today. So I'd love for you to kind of do a little introduction to yourself there, Janice, first of all, and just let the group know who you are, where you're from, what it is that you do, and the journey that you've been on.
Well, first of all, I'm super happy to be having this conversation with you because it was Nafsheen who put us together, and she's just an amazing light of an individual, and I love her. So anything that she's into or doing, I'm always like, oh, I better check that out. That's probably really good. And so I went over to your group, and I just love the like daily doses of inspiration and just beautiful people on there sharing their hearts and really just working toward becoming the highest versions of ourselves possible, and doing that using specific tools and just helpful things that you have put on that group. So that's how I came across the group, and it's been great because during 2020, as I'm sure you're kind of aware, a lot of us have gone onto the virtual arena, and it's kind of one of the main ways that we can connect. And it's been such a saving grace for me.
I agree.
Right? Because like, you're how far away from me right now? How many miles?
We're oceans apart. You're on the other side of the coast as well. Like obviously New York would be like ocean, the other side of the ocean, but you're kind of further afield than that.
I'm over California, so we're far. But see, I feel like we could literally be in the same room together right now. So that's the cool part of 2020. You know, trying to find those silver linings is definitely that I've been able to connect more to people around the world, which has been great.
I think it's just an amazing platform, and one of the reasons why I created this group was to create a community and to kind of meet like-minded people like yourself, and to kind of be able to discover their energies and to kind of understand their journeys. And what I'd like for people to know is the kind of journey that you've been on before I go into my journey. And I think they do kind of, everyone has a similar kind of journey where there has been some form of a struggle, but then the standing tall and the fight to kind of be where you are now. I'd love to know more about that.
Ooh, I know. And there's so many pieces, you know, now that we're like old.
We're not old.
Now that I'm a million years old, I feel like there's all these chapters and seasons of my life. But in a really quick nutshell of a version, I was born in Sacramento, California, so I'm actually back to my birthplace. And so I was born here. I have an older brother, 2 parents, and then when I was 8 years old, my parents decided they were going to move our whole family to Mexico City. So for me, it was a huge adventure. Like, we're going to a new city. We don't speak the language. We really didn't know anybody. It was like this crazy adventure. And my older brother, he's 3 years older, it was a little rougher for him because he had his friends here and, that whole thing. But we ended up moving to Mexico City and living there for 5 years. So those were the real formative years of my life that I can really remember, and it was such a gift. I will tell you, like, the best gift my parents probably ever gave me, besides the gift of life and just existing, was to move to a different country. And so I thrived there. I loved it. I learned the language probably in about 6 months, because you know how when you're a kid,
Yeah.
just like soak up everything. So I learned Spanish. And, you know, I sounded like a Mexican little girl running around. There was no difference. And just had an amazing time. And one of the important things about living there for me is it developed this self-confidence in me, because I was really special over there. You know, it was maybe like the blonde hair, blue-eyed. I just looked different from the majority of the people there. And so that had people wanting to be my friend, just, you know, out of the blue, wanting to talk to me. And, you know, feeling that like, oh, I'm different, but different good is what it felt like. And one of the
made you
things,
feel the value, would you
I
say?
felt the value, like there was something just intrinsically amazing about me, you know? And at a young age, that's pretty impactful, you know? So I was feeling pretty good about myself. And then we moved back to the United States when I was 13, and talk about being up on a pedestal and then like falling off and crashing down. That's exactly what happened, because I was put into a junior high school halfway through the year, and junior high, you know, people are kind of mean sometimes anyway. So I just remember being, you know, bullied and made fun of, and I had no friends. And I, you know, I had these big, thick Coke bottle glasses. So that was apparently hilarious for everybody to make fun of me. And it was a rough transition for me.
Do you know what though, Janice? I can completely relate to that. I'm not sure if you know of my journey as well, but my journey kind of started in a sense very similar, but not in a sense where I was valued as such, but because of the color of my skin, I was bullied. Because of my culture, I was bullied. I was made to feel like I didn't belong, because obviously my parents came, well, my mum came over here to the UK in the 60s while she was a child, because my grandfather, my mum's father, because Pakistan at that time was under the British rule, the government sent a request or a gift to my granddad to say that you can come over here and work. And then he brought his family over here. So my mum has known this as her country, as a way of living, but she hasn't forgotten her roots. But in the 80s and the 90s, us kids of colour over here in the UK were made to feel like we didn't belong. There was a phrase that was used, go back to your own country. That was used a lot over here. So it kind of led me to find a battle that I had to fight to belong here. So I felt completely lost. And like you said there, that where things came crashing down for you, where you'd gone from a pedestal where you felt like you were valued and you were special. I never had that here. I had a childhood where I had to battle for my place in this country to kind of make it my home. Even though I was born here, I knew nothing more than being here. It's the only difference that I had was that I was living two cultures, but I was always told to go back home to my own country. And that was a battle that I had to face.
Okay, that's so interesting, because we basically had exact opposite experiences based on solely the color of our skin. I mean, literally. Which,
Yes.
if that doesn't tell you, you know, not to judge a book by its cover, that it's so interesting to me that there is so much immediate judgment solely based on how a person looks. And I mean, that's
Definitely.
exactly, it's not like you know, I was out doing great things or you were out vandalizing houses, or it was literally just because of how we looked.
And I think it's so important to highlight that our childhood is the pathway to our struggles for the future. I think that's where the lack of self-love starts and develops and educates itself. I think the lack of confidence, kids can be very mean. And I think that in those kind of scenarios, that's where our struggle starts, in our self-confidence, in our self-awareness, in our self-love. Because of how we're made to feel at a young age, it grows with us. It really does grow with us. And that was the whole purpose of setting up this group. So people had a voice. People had a voice to kind of be themselves, a safe place where they felt part of a family, a part of a community. And that was the importance of this group. And it's so nice to kind of meet people like yourselves and the people that are in the group, that are engaging with the group. And I think both of our childhoods have shaped our future, where we are giving back to those people that need to be heard.
Totally. And it's that if we experience something that impacts us, let's say in a negative way, then that truly can become our purpose, right? Because we know what it felt like to be excluded. So in my case, I knew what it felt like to be included first, and feeling great about myself, and then a rough kind of transition to all of a sudden you're not good enough, you're ugly, nobody wants to be your friend. And so I was very excluded.
Can I ask you a question though, Jen?
Yeah.
How did you deal with that? How did you deal with the transition from going where you felt special to hear those nasty things being said to you? How did you cope with that? How did you deal with that?
That's a good question, because honestly, I just remember feeling horrible. And I remember crying at night, just going, why can't we go back to my home? Because at that point, Mexico was my home. And I just wanted to go back to, where I felt good about myself and included. So, but when you're a kid, you don't make those decisions. A lot of decisions are made for you. So we just kind of stayed here. And I do remember I got more involved in my church. So my parents, the reason we moved to Mexico was because they were missionaries. So they were over there with the Christian, denomination. And so coming back here, I kind of threw myself into church, which was more the safe place for me of, at least people being nicer to me and kind of having that community. But honestly, it didn't make up totally for when you go to school and it's basically your entire week of feeling not accepted, not included, not good enough. And that lasted until, I want to say, my sophomore year in high school. And then by my sophomore year, I just threw myself into sports. I loved playing volleyball. We talked about this a little bit previously, that I'm a little competitive, just like a little baby bit.
Just a tiny little bit.
Do you play sports? Are you competitive?
I love keeping fit. I love going to the gym. I've not really been that much of into competitive sports, but I do love keeping fit. But for me, I work in sales, so that automatically brings out the competitiveness in relation to goals and hitting goals, etc., and target driven. So that brings out the competitive side to me. But I do love keeping fit, but not as driven in the competitive sports as you, though.
Yeah, I think it's something a little innate. It seems like my whole family has this little bit of a competitive nature. So I threw myself into volleyball and then made friends in that unit, that group. And then I also always loved acting and speaking. So they didn't have an acting class at my high school, but they did have speech and debate. So I joined the speech and debate team, and I started doing these dramatic monologues where I would go and they had competitions also. No, not very competitive at all. Yeah, they would have these competitions, and I would go and deliver a monologue, and then, you know, you would compete with other schools and stuff like that. So I think once I found certain groups that I
Yeah.
belonged in, that made a huge difference. What about with
That,
you? What was that like over there for you, feeling, did you
for
ever
me,
come to a place of feeling accepted? And
do you know what though? For me, the journey kind of went on until I went to university, as you Americans call it, college years. So what happened to me was I got into a place where they made me feel like I had to hate myself. So I put on so much weight. Um, it, I think I'm not, if anybody's kind of struggled with their weight in their lives, they'll probably relate to this. I used to kind of walk past the mirror. I couldn't look at the mirror because I hated the reflection that was kind of reflecting back at me. So I always avoided the mirrors. Um, at one point, the hatred got to a certain extreme where they actually burnt my skin because they hated the color of my skin. So they made me feel like I should not be the color that I am. And that kind of went on through high school. It went on through later senior years at what we call sixth form, which is the later years of your high school years, the senior high school years for you. And then when I got to university, I met the most amazing friends. I had gained such a confidence through these group of friends who are now my family. They are still in my life. They make me who I am. And they bring out so much confidence because they love me for who I am. And it was that love that I found within them, the acceptance, whether I was Asian, whether I was brown, whether I was Pakistani from background. They didn't care about that. They cared about how they felt when I was around. And that brought so much magic, and that just brought so much confidence into my life where I could actually start to be me and start to love me again. The other big thing that I found was that I thought was huge in my development was that my mum pushed me to get a job. When I was in the senior years of high school, at the age of 16, she pushed me to get a job. But at that point in time, my confidence was so shattered that it was nerve-wracking to actually go and sit in an interview and kind of actually think about going to work and meeting new people and thinking about the judgment that they would give me without even actually getting to know me. But I tell you something, that was the start of the making of me, because it was a job in retail. It was in a supermarket. It's a company that got taken over by Walmart over there. So if people in America, they can relate where I was working. But it made me begin to meet people that loved me for me. So that's the importance of the message that I'm trying to put across, is that, yeah, there'll be people that will hate you, but there'll be people that see the magic in you as well. And I met people from the age of 16 that started to see the magic in my personality. It didn't matter what color I was. It didn't matter what size I was. It mattered who I was as a person. And that started to bring a whole new confidence. And that's where I started my fitness journey as well. And I found the gym, which kind of helped me build so much confidence. And it made me lose the weight that I put on through my high school years. So when I went to college, I had already found that confidence that I'd been given through my part-time job and the friends that I'd made there. But it made me find the people that I absolutely love now, the people that I call my family, and they may be watching this right now. And I want to just say that I love you.
ah, that is so amazing. Well, and it just reminds me that just as they had such a massive impact on you, we can each have massive impacts on other people that we come in contact with by looking beyond what we see on the outside and and seeing their soul, you know,
Yes.
seeing them for who they truly are. And that's just an awesome reminder, you know, for me, that I don't know what people are struggling with. I don't know what people's stories are and what they've been through. And any, you know, smile, any word of encouragement, anything can really just impact somebody in a huge way. So
Definitely. And I think now more than ever, though, Janice, I think people need to know that their voice matters. It doesn't matter who they are, it doesn't matter where they come from, it doesn't matter what their color of the skin is. They have a voice, they have a life, they have a life which is worth being loved. They have a community where they can reach out. If they feel that they are not okay, it's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to feel alone. And that is so important right now. That is so, so important right now, because there's people out there that are feeling forced to take their own lives because of how they may feel about themselves. And this is why it's so important for me and you and so many others to reach out and let people know that there is a voice and their voice needs to be heard. Someone told me, and I think I've mentioned this many times, and it sits so kind of close to my heart, is that we all have a song to sing. It needs to be heard. Everyone's waiting for our song to be heard. We just need to sing it loud and proud.
agreed, totally. And to go to the people or find those people that do see your value and that do see your worth, because there obviously are going to be people in the world who are too blind to, in their own world of whatever's going on with them, to see your value. But it's, you know, I think a lot of times if that happens, we get so caught up in the fact that that person was mean, or that person didn't include me, or that group of people, or whatever, that we don't realize that there are so many people in the world, and there are those people, you know, our tribe, the ones that just see us for who we are. They exist and they're out there, and we just need to keep looking for that, and not giving up hope just because there are some people that are not seeing our worth. It's funny, I don't know if it was in your group, there was something on Facebook I saw that I loved. It was, tell me if this sounds familiar, about an old watch. Does that sound familiar? It showed a picture of an old watch.
I can't recollect, but I'd love to know.
Okay, let me just briefly sum it up. It's better when you see the picture with and it talks about it, but it's a picture of a watch that looks pretty like old and rusty and whatever. And it says, you know, somebody found this watch and they took it to a pawn shop, and they were like, oh, how much can I get for this watch? And they're like, oh, well, it's dirty and, you know, kind of old, so I'll give you $10. And they take it to somewhere else and they try to sell it, and they're like, oh no, this is a kind of a piece of crap, you know, I'll give you $5. And then they take it to an antique store, and the antique owner's looking at it, taking all this time, and they're like, I will give you $10,000 or whatever, like an exorbitant amount of money for this watch. And it's just saying, you know, just because at one place they don't see your value does not mean that you are not incredibly valuable. You're just going to the wrong place.
I love that. And that is so powerful.
Yeah.
It is so powerful. And it's so relatable as well. Like, many of us go through life where one person and it could be in relationships, it could be in friendships, it could be in work relationships, it could be in work, it could be in the goals that we set ourselves. People may not see our value, but someone else will, and someone else will see the magic in us. I love that, though, Janice.
I'll send it to you, because I'll send it. It's a cool thing. Yeah.
Please do. If you could share it in the group, that would be amazing.
That's what I'll do. I'll share it in the group. Yeah, it's a good, and you know, it's much more eloquent than what I just said, but you got the idea.
Definitely, definitely. Can I ask, did you ever, whilst kind of going through your adulthood, have you find kind of situations where you've had to question your value?
Oh, yes. My whole life, I feel like, was about questioning my value and my worth and am I good enough? The ultimate, I think, that all of us, or many of us have, is just that fear of not being enough, fear of not being good enough. And no, I struggled with that hugely, and it still pops up in my life. But I feel like it's been about 9 years when I had it was my rock bottom moment. And then it was my slow transformation, which was about 9 years ago. And I started to really uncover my worth. Like, I feel like, you know, we have this value and worth that is just innate in us. And then as we go through life, it gets covered by fears, by things people say to us, by negative beliefs that we start piling on top, you know? And then all of a sudden, like, here's our worth, and it's just covered by not good enoughs and, you know, fears and all of the things. And so to me, what it felt like in my experience was like that onion that you peel the layers, and there's one layer and this layer, and you just go deeper and deeper. And all of a sudden, I had done so much work to uncover that I actually began to see and feel and know my true worth. So that's been amazing. What's your experience been with that?
I feel like there's been many aspects of my life where I've had to kind of pick myself up. But I think in those moments you find magic. And like you say, you kind of have to pick yourself up and peel that onion and peel those layers off, because those times where you hit rock bottom, that's where the true test is. And that's where you have to kind of pick yourself and start peeling those layers to find your true purpose. And I think there's been times in life where I've had to kind of question my value, but I I really do admire those times, because it's shown me how strong I am to pick myself up and to actually kind of realize what I'm meant to be here for, what message I'm truly meant to be sending out to the world, and what purpose I'm supposed to be kind of be driving out there. And I'm so grateful for those moments, because it's made me realize a strength that I never knew that existed whilst going through the childhood struggles. And it's kind of made me realize that I am amazing and I do love myself, and I have got so much to say to the world.
I love that. That is so cool. And yes, I love the analogy of the diamond and how diamonds are formed, you know, and they don't just magically happen. There's a process, and it's a, you know, burning, and I don't know exactly the whole process. I just know that it involves some pain and some, you know, buffing and whatever. And I feel like it's the same for us. And if we truly want to be that amazing, shining diamond, you know, we have to go through a process. There's some pain involved in that. There's some uncomfortable feelings and a working through process.
And I think it's true what people say, diamonds are made forever. We have a legacy to write. and we need to kind of create a legacy for what we want to be remembered for. If we're to be a diamond, we need to kind of have that legacy that we want. But that takes time, that takes effort, that takes fight, that takes a lot of resilience, that takes testing times where you have to kind of face that test. You have to face those obstacles. Life isn't easy, and it's those hard times that are actually the ones where the magic will just suddenly appear. It's just that we have to believe that the magic will appear through those testing times, because hard times don't last forever. I'm a big believer that good things happen to good people, and I think that we all face bad times. We've all faced testing times, whether it be good people or bad people. It's just that we have to believe that what we deserve will come to us. We just have to keep facing our fears. We have to keep facing our tests, and we have to keep fighting those and crossing those hurdles, because that's where we will truly find what we're meant to be. And we'll just get our message in that moment where you hit rock bottom. You'll suddenly realize what it is that you're meant to be doing. And it was when I went through the attacks in Nice, when I was a witness to the attacks in Nice. And in that moment, and I'll share a memory that I have, on that night, in that moment, it lasts with me forever. And it was my hypnotherapist that said, in a moment where there was so much bad and there was so much bad energy, there was one moment of light. So we had run away from the area where the truck had hit and killed so many people. I was literally yards away, but we all ran and hid behind a car. And there was hundreds of us behind one car. And we just looked. It was me, my brother, and my sister. And we just looked at each other, because there was rumors that there was a sniper on a motorbike that was going around killing people. We just looked at each other. There was no way that we would survive if that was the case. And all of a sudden, this old French lady tapped me on the shoulder. She couldn't speak English. There was no form of communication between us other than her gesture and her hand to say, there's a space there, you hide there. So she put me before herself. And that was my saving moment. That was my, in a moment of where there was so much bad energy, there was love present. And that made me realize that my purpose was to go, when I got home, my purpose was to use that moment and realize that there's so much love to spread. There's so much help that I can give to those that go through anxiety, stress, post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's for me to create something that will give people a resource to turn to, so they can start to believe in themselves and not go through that daily struggle. And it was that moment that kind of made me realize that there is love out there. There is magic in bad moments, that there is a moment where you'll just have something that will just click and make you realize that there is good in that testing moment. And that lady just made me realize that.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That is an incredible story. And wow. I would say, yes, for this year, it's similar, right? I mean, this is a hard year, and globally and collectively. But in the midst of it, I have been so encouraged by things like this, you know, by people like yourself. The good, the beautiful, the peaceful, the positive, those things, they shine so bright amidst evil or negative, or, you know, these things that we wish did not exist right now. And I think that's the task for a lot of us, is to, during this year, look at and focus on the beautiful and the positive and the uplifting, and groups like yours. I mean, I
It's
think,
to unify us all together because we're going through the same thing. I think this is the first time that the world has got it is going through a similar type of purpose, a similar type of incident where we can just unify. It doesn't matter where you're from or what corner of the world you're from. It's for us to come together.
yeah, I
And
agree.
we're doing that right now.
And we're doing it.
Yeah.
We're doing our part. And that's what I love, is that you're doing your part with what was put on your heart to do that day. You know, a lot of times I think behind our greatest fear truly lies our greatest treasure. Like, you know, so that's a very fearful, horrible moment in time that you were in. And then you have chosen to take that and to impact other people positively with something terrible that you went through. And I think for all of us, if we can do that, and obviously that requires healing ourselves first.
Yeah.
So you had to do all the work to get to the point of where you're at now, that you can actually come and share all of this with us.
Definitely. It's so important to kind of focus on the work on yourself, whether it's through a healer, whether it's through journaling, whether it's through meditation. Like you say, though, Janice, it's so important to work on yourself first before you're able to share anything with anyone else or be able to help someone else. It's so important to work on yourself first.
And you know what? This is a great segue, since this went by so fast. Can I tell you we're almost at 40 minutes, which I can't believe.
Wow.
Wow. That was like, I swear, like we just started talking. But speaking of working on ourselves, I do want to post, with your permission, those half-hour yoga videos. So I'll post a yoga video. I actually did these for a yoga challenge that I had done 2 or 3 weeks ago. So they're already just pre-recorded videos, and they're meant to be for beginners and, you know, people that maybe have been intimidated by yoga a little bit in the past, just to give it a try and get some movement and the intentional breathing. And for me, yoga was very healing in my life. It was one of the things that really helped me. So I'd love to post that on here if anybody wants to do some yoga.
I'd love that. And I think the group would really appreciate that they've got some form of resource to kind of work on bringing that good energy and let it flow into their lives, especially the breathing techniques will allow them to kind of focus on any kind of anxious kind of feelings that they have. So thank you so much for doing that.
Of course, my pleasure. And I've had such a blast talking to you today. Seriously.
Oh, thank you so much.
Next week.
I can't wait till next week either. Thank you so much, Janice, and thank you everyone for joining us both on our first ever episode, and we've got 3 more to go. But do let us know what you thought about this, and if you've got any ideas of what things you would like for us to talk about. I'm sure we'd love to know, wouldn't we, Janice?
Yes, I would love to know what topics, what things are applicable right now.
Thank you so much once again for joining me, and thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next week at the same time.
Bye.
See you soon.